Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to talk about Stranger Things 4. Spoiler alert for all of Stranger Things. And we're going to talk about putting your players on notice about them leaving the D&D campaign, about you Xing them out, about you leaving them behind, about you handling their problems, right? And moving your D&D campaign forward without them, okay? All right, so let's talk about this because now the reason I want to talk about this is I want to talk about a D&D campaign, a successful D&D campaign that has engaged players, okay? And then the need to manage problem behavior from specific players who actually are performing well in the game overall but sending signals external to the game that are problematic. All right. Now, so basically, let me give an example of this, and this is all coming from the Stranger Things 4 season and what was happening there, which I'll explain that situation in a minute. Okay. So let me give you an example of this. Okay. Let's say you have a D&D campaign and you have four players. Okay. And two of your players are very engaged and very skilled, and they're doing a good job at the table moving the narrative forward, and they're not giving you any problems at the table, okay? But externally they are. Okay, so one, let's say that, before and after the game, your players are dismissive of the other players, okay? Let's say that that they're dismissive of the other players, right? And also they're very inclusive. So maybe one of your players is very inclusive, is like, "Hey everybody, that was a great game. I'm going to the movies on Tuesday." And then they say to two of the players, "Hey, Sarah, you want to come with me? Sarah and Jane, you want to come with me?" But then they like quite literally exclude one of the other players and don't include them in the external invite, right? That seems like a small thing, right? But it's happening at your table. You're the dungeon master, right? You have a player that's been slighted, embarrassed, excluded, right? It's hard to say it's a problem though, right? Because this is happening after the game. It's an invite that's being given after the game, right? But the exclusion is clear if you're paying attention, right? That's a problem, right? There are all kinds of other issues that can happen like this, right? So, here's one, like, books at the table, right? And somebody, like you might have this player who's not bringing books and then borrowing somebody else's, and then just literally grabbing somebody else's book that's at the table to answer a question or two, right? All kinds of different problems, right? The other issue is, what if this player plays in multiple tabletop role playing in other D&D campaigns? This is a big one. What if they play in other D&D campaigns and they start to squawk that that you need to up your game, right? Like your campaign needs to be a little more exciting, or they're gonna just shift over full time to that other game they're in, right? Or maybe take another session that might conflict with your session from that other game. So there's lots of ways that players can give you trouble that is external to the game. The book example probably was one of the best one, right? I'm trying to, so why are we talking about this? Well, this does come up, right? And there's lots of different tables, and there really might be a need for you to exclude players from your table. Now, the thing that brought this up is actually not my current Sunday game in any way. My current Sunday game has never been going better. Like, it's really running on rails. I'm incredibly blessed with how well our Sunday game is going, right? There are multiple dungeon masters there. It's the whole thing. So, but it's going very, very well. So this is not me speaking about my current players. About one of the things that really made me think about this was actually looking at Stranger Things 4. So the structure of Stranger Things 4, and Stranger Things 4 deeply impacts Dungeons and Dragons. What happens in and around Stranger Things 4 is going to impact literally Dungeons and Dragons all over the world, right? If Stranger Things 4 does well, D&D is probably going to get 0.1 to maybe a million more players. Not a joke, right? Like, if D&D, if Stranger Things 4 does poorly, we could lose point 0.1 to a million players, right? Because it's that large. Stranger Things impacts Dungeons & Dragons that directly, okay, in my humble opinion. All right. So what's going on with Stranger Things 4? So I absolutely love Stranger Things 4, but if you're paying attention, the story, the narrative of Stranger Things 4 actually carries a very powerful, very interesting lesson in it. Listen to this. I've never seen anything like this in my entire life. This is wild, right? So basically, Stranger Things 4 is the largest streaming hit in history. Nothing has ever come even close to it, right? So America is just like we, by the way, everything significant and real and major generally gets built in America first and then copied in other countries. Please tell me where I'm wrong. Like, what are some trends that came from other countries that we do in America now that, like, is innovative or new? I'm hoping I'm wrong about this. Maybe I am. Let's see, right? But generally, you really get this situation where if it's new, if it's fresh, it's exciting, it gets built in America and it gets exported elsewhere, right? And streaming, same thing, right? Like, biggest streamers in the world, Netflix. America invented streaming, right? And then it gave you the number one streamer in the world, and then it gave you the number two streamer in the world. It's Netflix, and then it's Disney, okay? Right? And so basically, Stranger Things is farthest out on streamer mega hit problems, okay? Now, we've already saw this on, what was it again? It was like Big Bang Theory, right? Okay, so Big Bang became one of these shows where it was very clearly known. It was massively popular. It was, and Stranger Things, actually, Big Bang Theory gets sold every 2-3 years for new streaming rights to a new service for like $500 million, $1 billion. Like, and there's like 4 or 5 shows that are like this now. Like Seinfeld is one of these shows, and Big Bang Theory is one of these shows. Friends is one of these shows. Where now these are old, these are old shows that are still showing up on streaming services, right? But Stranger Things 4 is the first streaming service, and Big Bang had this problem that Stranger Things is now having, right? So Sheldon was the actor. I don't remember that actor's name. Sorry. I'm a very big fan of his. He's an excellent actor, and he's done a really good job. He's definitely my favorite. He's everybody's favorite on Big Bang. So Sheldon, he was getting like, I think it was like 5 million to 10 million an episode in the final seasons. And the number was so high that it was a major problem for his coworkers, because I think he was making as much as like the 3 or 4 behind him together, right? And he was just collecting huge checks, right? And, to keep this thing going. And it was a problem. He was doing a great job as Sheldon, but the actor was a problem for the show. Stranger Things has exactly the same problem with Millie Bobby Brown and with Finn Wolfhard. They are actual, real candidates for perhaps the last, or the resurrecting Hollywood stars, right? Tom Cruise is ancient as dirt. He's a real Hollywood star, okay? Before the Chris Rock slap, Will Smith was an actual star, right? And a Hollywood star, a remaining Hollywood star. Sandra Bullock, she just made the first rom-com to top 100 million in like 10 years, right? It's called The Lost City. It was an excellent movie. You should definitely see it. And she's a real Hollywood star, right? Well, Millie Bobby Brown and Finn Wolfhard, they've done so well in Stranger Things, and actually shown up and shown out and said, if there's going to be a new Hollywood star, it's going to be us, because the world knows us. They know our face. And nothing, if you don't know this, pay attention. The most powerful force in the world today is American celebrity, and almost nothing in the world is more important, more powerful right now than name recognition. If people know your name, if people know your name, you could walk up in front of a black tie gala, slap somebody in the face, and then make a speech about love, right? You could just do nonsense stuff. Like, you could assault people, right, with no repercussions, right? Like, it's crazy the things you can get away with if people know your name, right? Outlandish what you can get away with if people know your name. But if people don't know your name, you can't do nothing. It don't matter if you have the best It don't even matter if you're rich anymore. People don't know who you are. You don't matter, right? And so there's this big thing, right? So what's happening now with Stranger Things 4 is Millie Bobby Brown and Finn Wolfhard have become major problems for the show, right? Because basically they know, right? Millie Bobby Brown and Finn Wolfhard, but first of all, they're not celebrities. They're celebrities. They're not American celebrities. They're American mega celebrities, right? And they have teams. Their teams are probably 25 to 100 people, right? Every single aspect of them outside the show, right? Hair, makeup, clothes, everything they drink, everything they eat, right? There are teams around them, like people's jobs, dozens, if not 100 plus jobs, ride on every decision they make, right? And so they can hold the show over a barrel, right? So the show, so when you watch the show, right, one of the things they do in Stranger Things Season 4 is they break every single major mattering relationship in the show. Jonathan and Nancy, broken up. Elle and Mike, almost certainly broken up. And really their relationship, Mike will not tell Eleven he loves her, right? They are making sure that relationship is very, very tenuous and not actually, it's tenuous and not, not strong, right? The relationships of every single one in the party, Whale DM, Will, Lucas, Dustin, Mike, all of their relationships are strained, right? Now, you could, if you're not paying attention, you could say, oh, well, that's the story, Scott. It's not the story. It's the narrative that we're being served up, but there's a second through line, right, that you need to understand. Netflix is saying to Finn Wolfhard, yeah, you can go, right? Like, if you want to shuffle off to Hollywood, we can definitely do this show without you, right? And they really sidelined Mike in this he had very little to do in Season 4, right? Now, 11 is key to the story, right? And Millie Bobby Brown, it is going to be challenging. It is going to be challenging to do Stranger Things without her, but not impossible, right? And Netflix, through what they gave 11 to do in the story, they're like, hey, we still want to be in business with you. You do such a great job with 11. We can't, it would be very hard to move this show forward without you. We can and will do it, right? We will overcome that obstacle, but we would much rather come to a nice, reasonable, amount for you to stay in the show, right? And so, so basically the story is saying we're going to keep you, right? So that's what we need to learn from, is we are in the same position, right? As Dungeon Masters, we have to handle the in-campaign material and the out-of-campaign material. And we can have players who threaten us, right, with their own success, right? Saying, I could take all this glory, all this shine, all this great role-playing that's happening at your table, and I could take it to another table, right? And so we have to manage that. So, and the best way by far to do that is in campaign, in the story, right? Don't have a conversation. Don't talk to your players. Don't schmuck it, right? That's the worst advice going right now. Talk to your players. So, oh my gosh, I'm not going to do my talk to your players as a stupid speech. Talk to your players is stupid. I'll just do it real quick. You're not going to get the truth. A lot of conversations that are had between you and your players aren't real. They're performative. They're, one person says something and they give the expected answer, and the real answer is between the lines. It's in the subtext, right? All right, and actually, you're right. If you have like players who aren't layered and complex, or if you're not layered or complex, I'm sure you and your players all tell each other the truth, right? And all believe you're telling each other the truth. But the reality is, especially when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, right, you are highly likely to be running into layered, complicated people, right? And when and at that level, communication is rarely simple, right? And the reality is, the real answers are in the subtext. The real answer is in between the lines, right? All right, so you have all this happening, right? And so how do you handle a problem player, a player who's threatening to take their talents elsewhere, right? So first of all, you have to do what Netflix is doing. Can you get along without them, right? Like, first of all, you don't want to cave to a player if you don't have to, right? So if you have a player and you're like, oh my gosh, I really I would hate to lose this player at the table. I'd hate to lose the role playing they bring, the excitement they bring, the passion they bring. But the reality is I have 3 other players, and if I lose this one, I can go deeper with those other 3, right? And maybe bring them up. And maybe having one less star at the table is going to give some space for everybody else to shine. So, and then at that point, you can start, you can actually start giving that player in-game, in campaign, less to do, right? And making sure that they're double or triple teamed by the monsters, right? And that they spend a lot of their time unconscious, right? Or doing death saves, right? It's definitely a way to handle it in narrative, right? The other thing is a lot sometimes. So some of the communication can be, one of the things you could do to just external to the game, right? On the before and after, when they arrive, earlier, when they are, just packing up their backpack, say, hey, how's your other Dungeons and Dragons campaign going? And they'll say, oh, XYZ. And, it's like, oh, that sounds great. That really sounds like you're having a fun time there. That's wonderful. I'm sure they're really happy to have you at the table. And you were saying you were going to be spending more time there, maybe? That sounds like a great idea. You could just, if you feel like you can move the story forward without them, don't be threatened. Do not ever be threatened, right? Don't let people bully you with threats, right? So run right into the teeth of the dragon on that one, right? The other way and then handling these players in narrative, the other thing you could do is, some of the things you can do is, one, just give them less to do. The other thing that I would do is every time a quest giver talks, don't ever talk to them direct, right? And make the quest giver dismissive of them, and make the quest giver very responsive to other players, right? And really just try to put them into the back seat on the game itself, right? The other thing is, make sure when you give out treasure. So this is really critical, right? One of the things, when you give out treasure, you decide who finds what treasure. They're always going to find the coins, and your other players are always going to find the magical swords, right? And you can build a lattice. You can build a platform to really put a player who's given you problems the way Finn Wolfhard and, in my humble opinion, Millie Bobby Brown have already begun to give problems to Netflix, right? Kind of saying, hey, I got this Ghostbusters, movie go over here, Millie Bobby Brown, like, hey, I got, I'm in this Godzilla series, you guys gonna put, 5 figures on my, per episode for me, I'm sorry, not 5 figures, 7 figures, right? So you can, if you're getting these kind of problems, these kind of overt threats from your players, you can start to build this. What are some other ways that you can use the campaign narrative to put these kind of players into their place? And by the way, this is a fairly rare situation, right? You're only going to see this in top tier games, but if you're here, you're pursuing a top tier game, so it's definitely worth talking about. Let's say the last thing you can do is miniatures. Miniatures are a big growing part of the game, right? So one, if your player characters don't have miniatures for their characters, go down to your LGS and see if you can just pick up a miniature for them, right? Especially for the ones who are not your problem players. Just bring back miniatures for the players that are not threatening you, and specifically leave out the last one. Those are my ideas for handling this situation. Have you seen this before? What are your thoughts on how to handle this very unique kind of problem player? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.